Well, when I left you last time, I was talking about tire shrinkers and the couple of manual hot tire shrinkers that I have, a floor mount and a wall mount. And then I brought in this tire shrinker as well. Actually, the tag calls it a tire setter. National Hydraulic Tire Setter Company in Keokuk, Iowa. But I picked it up in northern Nebraska in mid 1982. Brought it home, tore it apart, cleaned it up, and painted it. And when I got it, it was just this rust color, and now you can see it is this red color. Well, I had this in my shop for a number of years. Our oldest son was born in 1983, and I have a picture of him standing in front of this tire shrinker when I am guessing he is probably 3 or 4, possibly. So I'd have had this about 4 years at that time. And if you look closely at this picture, you can see all the sawdust around the floor. You can see that this hydraulic tank that is on this machine now is still in that picture. You can see all the oil that is underneath that hydraulic tank. But you can see also that the paint is much fresher in that picture. Well, in 1986, I was buried in wheelwork, and you can see the clutter and the chaos. Well, by the time 1987 came around, our youngest, Janelle, had not yet been born, but I went south to Houston, Texas, and the Arkansas Village was selling out, and I went down to a sale and I bought some equipment there, the main one being a West hydraulic tire shrinker. And this is one that the whole wheel sets into and has 18 cylinders and comes in and mechanically, hydraulically compresses the tire. So when I brought that up into the shop, this tool, this tire setter, was really not of much use to me anymore. And so I had a good friend that was up in Ronan area north of here, Pat Miller, and we had been working together. He was an avid wagon man, and he was interested in this tire setter because he was picking up wagons and just needed tires tightened up a little bit, and this was the perfect solution for him. So he took it somewhere, I'm guessing, in 1988 or 9. This is vague in my memory. Pat's daughters probably remember this better than I do. Anyway, he took it home. So that would have been, 35 or 36 years ago, in there somewhere. Well, Pat died in January of 2002. And I often wondered what happened to this tire setter after that. Well, that's been 23 years ago now. And in the last Small Farmers Journal issue, there was an article by one of his daughters, Jane, about memorializing Pat and offering some of his wagon collections for sale if anyone was interested. Well, she had an address in this article, so I dropped her a line and said, what fond memories I have of her dad. And by chance, was this tire setter still around? And I got a response that yes, it was. And she remembers when her dad bought this and took it home, but yet had been sitting idle. In fact, I guess after the fact, after they brought it back down, visiting with them, the two sisters and their twins, realize now that Pat never did use this. So it sat idle for roughly 35 years. And now after 22 years after his passing, this tire shrinker comes back to where it was 35 to 40 years ago. So I've been trying to decide if it stays here in the shop or possibly with this starting of a museum across the street, I thought about putting it over there. That gets crowded really fast, and obviously, I stay pretty crowded here as well. But I've concluded at this point I'm going to put it over where that borax wheel is, like I mentioned last time. So this hydraulic reservoir is just how I got it initially. I never did change it. It had some leaks on it. I have flushed it out, repaired those leaks, and actually I'm going to take a can of red paint and paint it to make it blend in a little more. I may build a stand underneath that so I can remove this wire here. It's not really holding a lot anyway, but maybe make a stand that this can set on. And I'm going to see if I can't get it across to the other side. Now I have this pallet jack that I can get it over there. The question is, how do I get it off the jack? This thing, as I remember, if my memory is worth a hoot, I weighed this individually as I had it torn apart, and I think it is close to 1,500 pounds. So that's going to be the next challenge, get it over there. Then I'm going to fill the hydraulic reservoir and see if I can get this to work. It's been 35 years since it has functioned. Hopefully it still operates, and I'll show you just how this works.
Don't take a leaf.
So this has two piston pumps on it. You can see one is a larger ram than the other. This is a lower pressure, high volume, and this is a lower volume, high pressure. So if this was to shrink, say, a 3-inch tire, we bring it up and then disconnect this ram and then push strictly with this ram. So this is the release valve, and in that old picture, the original cast handle used to be here, but somewhere that got misplaced. I may have to make one for that. So as I pump this by hand, we should be able to see if this thing works. See this cylinder start to extend. And then this valve would release the pressure. And collapse the cylinder back down again. So there are two compression springs like this. There's one on each side, and that's what brings this cylinder back. So this has two 2¼ inch, pretty massive sized bolts. They connect to the head of this ram and then to the back end of these jaws here. So this jaw stays stationary and this jaw is pulled up, which is causing the compression because the teeth on these jaws grab the tire and then cause that upsetting between these two jaws. And these jaws are adjustable by inserting these shims on each side. So that would be the maximum width there, which is generally, you can get a 3-inch tire in here. That's about the max of what this will do. Or if we shim it down, so here we would do an 1.5-inch tire. So if we did a smaller wheel, we just need a fatter shim, and these would move on in to where you could bring it down and do a 1-inch buggy tire if you had to. And these jaws on the back side have a rod that's pinned into them, and they fit down into this slot here. And these shims have it as well. So it has these two handles here, and they can be operated by the foot as well. But if these are pushed out, you can see that it draws these jaws closer. Now it draws that tight. Since these are built on a wedge, when you move these out, it sucks these down onto the tire. Or if you bring them in, that's what helps release them after the shrink has been done. And that's where this pedal is helpful, because that helps put the tension of the jaws on the tire while you start your pumping process. And this bar that goes across the top has a sliding block here, and it hinges onto that little upright here. So this can be brought out of the way to put your wheel in and take it out. So once the wheel is in, it comes across and locks on this bar here. This is positioned over the felly, and then this stair step affair here is to accommodate the different thickness of the fellies. The shorter the felly, the more you just bring it down, but you just find where it's close, and then this puts the tension down onto the felly to keep tension against this plate to keep that tire tight. You don't want that tire to fold this way, you want it to compress this way. So this keeps the tension on that whole process. Well, you can see we do have a few leaks. Evidently this big cylinder has a seal that leaks. These are generally a leather kind of a cup seal, but this has been setting idle for so long that's not too surprising. And my guess is this will probably tighten up, especially when I shrink a tire and put some pressure against that seal. It'll not only soften the seal with some fresh oil in there, but it should form that up against the housing with some pressure. But for right now, I'll just see if I can't contain that spill a little bit. And I see I have a little bit of a seep here on my high pressure piston pump. Few little things that I gotta pay attention to, perhaps. As you can tell from those old pictures that I had with bread in there, this thing had a fair number of leaks. I might have to take some time and tighten this down on that fitting. So you remember my old original Yellowstone Park stagecoach wheel? This came off of an 11 passenger. It's actually not too bad a shape. It wouldn't be a wheel that I would run without some repair. I have a spoke that has a split right down the center, but the fellies are good and it is loose, and there's a couple ways you can test tightness on a tire. One is to tap it with a hammer. It has kind of that flat, rattly sound. And the other is to just pick it up and drop it on a concrete slab. See how flat that sounds. So this has tire bolts every other spoke. And so I'm going to take a section between tire bolts and do it in that section. And I may do this 2 or 3 times. If you try to do everything in one spot, you end up with a bigger knot. You can take it in 2 or 3 spots, and it helps take the stress off of these bolts, because if you shrink the tire all in one spot, it strains all these bolts pulling that tire sideways. And as I'm kind of doing through the process, I take a hammer and I kind of tap on it, and you'll see what I do. But I think this is the wheel we'll test and see if it works. I've got her set at a 2-inch space, and that should be the tire. Right in there. I already hear a difference. You see these little teeth marks here on the edge? That's the sign of the Edge Grip tire shrinker. Sounds a lot better. My high pressure cylinder was really starting to leak pretty strongly, so I don't know that I really put as much pressure on this as I could have, but it's tight where it was really loose. I had a lot of joints open up between the spokes and the fellies, and those tightened all up. It's not brand new tight, but like I say, I've got a broken spoke, got a big split in this hub here. It's not going to be brand new, and it's not a serviceable wheel anymore. I just thought it would be a good demonstration of the process of how I used to use this and how it was used. So I was seeping here. I think I need new packings in this, and still leaking pretty good on this joint down here. I'm going to have to open this up and try to tighten it up. Well, many of you have been doing your research and have been sending me information on all makes and models of tire setters, and I do appreciate that. A good many of them I have seen in the past, and like I say, that West Shrinker actually had that at one time. It is the ideal one because it does this process, but it does it uniformly around the whole circumference of the tire. That machine is capable of doing a 4-inch wide tire, 3/4 inch thick, and it generates 400 tons pressure cumulative between all those 18 cylinders. It's an amazing machine. But this one, there was a Chuck Cashel, if I pronounce that correctly, that sent me a copy of a newspaper ad from Broken Bow, Nebraska, which is north of the Interstate I-80. And it's kind of in that area. I'm going to show you what that advertisement was, and I really get a kick out of it, but it's specifically addressed as a scientific hydraulic tire setter. Mr. Farmer, that machine, I am more and more convinced, is this machine. I picked it up in that area somewhere, and the more I mull over that, what are the chances that there would be a scientific hydraulic edge grip tire shrinker in northern Nebraska? More than one. I think this machine is the one that's in that advertisement. I can't rock solid prove it, but that's the area that I bought it from. That Broken Bow just rings a bell in me. Anyway, that was the most exciting information that you sent. That was really cool, and I really appreciate that, Chuck Cashel. So anyway, I've got some maintenance to do. It's not a deal that I'm going to do a lot of. It just has a lot of memories. It's got some history behind it. I still don't know a lot of the history behind the company themselves, National Hydraulic Tire Setter Company. That seems to be pretty obscure. I guess they transitioned into Lowry Hydraulic Company, but the history of National Hydraulic is pretty vague. I think I will probably list this on Keith Rucker's site. He has a reference to the National Hydraulic Tire Setter Company, and he has one ad linked in there, but nothing is listed, no pictures, no nothing. I think maybe this one belongs on his site. Anyway, that's kind of the basics of this edge grip tire shrinker. Appreciate you coming along, and I do appreciate all your help looking into where this company was. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. I'm going to mount this back up in here. So when you come to visit, it's going to be here. And get it in its right spot. There we go. So when you come to visit, you can actually see how this is supposed to operate.